Happy Christmas Eve, everyone! I'm Alexa, resident Ookie Spooky Girly, but also a big sap when it comes to the holiday season. What can I say? I'm a big fan of nutcrackers and baking festive desserts, so today's video is going to be a lovely combination of the fun holiday with the spooky twist we all know and love, so I hope you're ready for some wholesomeness. Question for you, what are your Christmas Eve traditions? Mine involve watching Hallmark movies with my best friend after enjoying some holiday cocktails, so let me know yours in the comments, and welcome to the top 5 dark Christmas urban legends too evil to ignore. Number 5. Hans Trapp. So for as long as there's been a jolly old Saint Nick providing gifts for well-behaved little ones, there has been somebody or something filling in the role of his counterpart, punishing the naughty ones. These fearsome figures range from the iconic horned Krampus, we all know Krampus, to Perta, the shape-shifting Christmas witch who fills folks' bellies with straw. So if you're misbehaving, ugh. Granted, I think the most terrifying one out of all of them is Hans Trapp. It's the classic tale of a man selling his soul to become rich in the 15th century. Now, the legend of the Christmas Scarecrow is well known in the French regions of Alsace and Lorraine. His thirst for power was so great that he turned to deals with the devil to enhance said power and status. Hearing of this, the Pope himself excommunicated Trapp, after which he was banished from Alsace? I couldn't really find a pronunciation, so let me know in the comments, and his wealth and lands confiscated. Lonely and mad, Trapp lived out the rest of his days at a cabin high in the mountains, somewhere in, the region. There he continued to brood and his evil desires festered. He also developed a hankering to try the taste of human flesh. Finally, he became the dreaded Christmas Scarecrow. Adorned in straw as a disguise, he waited on lonely roads for a victim. And one day, a small boy came across the dwelling, and a hungry, unstable Trapp cooked him for dinner. As fate would have it though, before he could dig in, Trapp was struck by lightning, and that was the end of him. His story lives on in the form of a boogeyman-like tale that says he sometimes returns to civilization on Christmas, going door to door in search of another meal. So, check your peephole before you open your door on Christmas Eve, or any day. Number 4. Mary Lwyd. So this is the textbook definition of nightmare fuel, and I'm sorry for proving that here. However, the iconic holiday traditions, which is said to be derived from some sort of religious rite, possibly paganism, in the early 1800s simply could not be left off of today's list. So, the creature itself is a horse's skull that is decorated with ribbons and affixed to a pole. The back of the skull is attached with a white sheet, which drapes down to conceal both the pole and the individual carrying this device. So on occasion, the horse's head was represented by not a skull. Instead, it was made from wood or paper. And in some instances, the horse's jaw was able to open and close as a result of a string or a lever attached to it. And there are accounts of some pieces of glass being affixed into the eye sockets, to represent eyes. This custom was first recorded in 1800, with subsequent accounts of it being produced into the early 20th century. According to these, the Mary Lwyd was a tradition performed at Christmas time by groups of men who would accompany the horse on its travels around local areas. Although the makeup of such groups varied, they typically included an individual to carry the horse, a leader, and individuals dressed as stock characters. The men would carry the figure to local houses where they would request entry through song. The householders would be expected to deny them entry, again through song, and the two sides would continue the responses to one another in this manner. If the householders eventually relented, the team would be permitted entry and given food and drink. Although the custom was given various names, it was best known as, Mary Lwyd. The etymology of this term remains a subject of academic debate, by the way. The folklorist Iorth C. Peat believed the term meant Holy Mary. It was as a reference to Mary, mother of Jesus, while the folklorist E. C. Cott thought it was more likely that the term had originally meant grey mare, referring to the head's, equine appearance. Several earlier folklorists who examined the topic, such as Pete and Ellen Ettlinger, believed the tradition had once been a pre-Christian religious rite, although scholarly support for this interpretation has declined amid a lack of supporting evidence. The absence of late medieval references to such practices and the geographic dispersal of the various British hooded animal traditions among them, the hooding of Kent, the broad of Cotswolds, and the old ball, old top, and old horse of northern England, have led to suggestions that they derive from the regionalized popularization of the 16th and 17th century fashion for hobby horses among the social elite. Although the tradition declined in the early to mid-20th century, partly due to opposition from some local Christian clergy and changing social conditions, it was revived in new forms in the mid to latter part of the century. The tradition has also inspired various artistic depictions, appearing for instance in the work of the painter Clive Hicks Jenkins and the poet Vernon Watkins. So if you encounter a horse skull on your doorstep, congratulations! Apparently you've got some good luck. Anybody got a spare horse skull? Number 3, the Yule Lads. Look, I hate to be the one to make the comparison, but when I first saw a photo of these little guys, they totally reminded me of the 7 Dwarfs from Snow White, which is one of my favorite Disney movies, so I couldn't understand how they're considered demonic. But I also think Annabelle's adorable and precious, so maybe my view on the world is a little bit warped. The 13 Yule Lads are mischievous winter spirits from Icelandic folklore, and over time they've become a friendlier presence and similar in appearance to Santa Claus. But they haven't always been that way. Once depicted as evil spirits and trolls, the Yule Lads originally represented the dark spirits of nature taking over as winter forced communities indoors and off the mountains. They are the 13 sons of Grilla, a young person eating ogress, symbolic of hunger and scarcity of food. Now, the oldest poems about Grilla describe her as a parasitic beggar. She walks around asking parents to give her their disobedient offspring. Now, her plans can be thwarted by giving her food or chasing her away. And originally she lived in a small cottage, but in later poems she appears to have been forced out of town and into a remote cave. Current-day Grilla can detect young people who are misbehaving year-round. She comes down from the mountains during Christmas time, though, to search for her meal. So she leaves her cave, hunts them down, and carries them home in her giant sack to devour as her favorite stew. Now, according to legend, there's never a shortage of food for her. According to folklore, Grilla has been married 3 times. Her third husband is said to be living with her in their cave in the, lava fields with the big black Yule cat and their sons. She supposedly has dozens of offspring with her previous husbands, but they're rarely mentioned nowadays. Right, back to the lads. So they're going to come down to the town and the farms, one by one, eventually covering the streets on Christmas Eve, which was when the spirits of winter had fully reclaimed the land. They would then retreat one by one as the days become longer and winter begins to run its course. There were previously as many as 82 Yule Lads, who were far more cruel and punishing. However, an 18th century royal decree about religious practice and domestic discipline banned parents from using horror stories and monsters to threaten their offspring. As such, the stories became much tamer, leading to the far more generous and only slightly naughty characters present today. In the mid-19th century, author John Arneson drew inspiration from the Brothers Grimm and began collecting folk tales, so his 1862 collection is the first mention of the names of the Yule Lads. So they visit on the 13 nights before Christmas, and every single time they make your life a little bit worse than it was before. Young people leave their shoes on the windowsill, and the Yule Lads can tell by the shoe whether they've been good or bad. Punishments include stealing your food, slamming all your doors, and stealing your candles. Now, each Yule Lad has a different name and visits across, like I said, the 13 days leading up to Christmas. And yes, obviously I'm going to name all 13 guys. It's me. So Sheep Cote Claude harasses sheep, but is impaired by his stiff peg legs and arrives first on December 12th. Gollygog hides in gullies, waiting for an opportunity to sneak into the cowshed and steal milk, and he arrives on December 13th. Stubby is abnormally short and steals pans to eat the crust left on them. Oh, and he arrives on December 14th. Spoonlicker is pretty straightforward. He steals and licks wooden spoons. He's extremely thin due to malnutrition, and I think I'm good with listing when these guys arrive. I'm sure you get the point by now. Pot Scraper simply, steals leftovers from pots, while Bowl Licker hides under beds, waiting for someone to put down their askur, which is a type of bowl with a lid that was used instead of dishes, which he then steals. Door Slammer obviously likes to slam doors, especially during the night, waking people up. Skyr Gobbler has an affinity for skyr, which is apparently similar to yogurt. Next up, Sausage Swiper hides in the rafters and snatches sausages that are being smoked. Window Peeper is a snoop who looks through windows in search of things to steal. Doorway Sniffer has an abnormally large nose and an acute sense of smell, which he uses to locate leaf bread. Meat Hook, yeah, you guessed it, uses a hook to steal meat. And finally, Candle Stealer follows young people in order to steal their candles, which were once made of tallow and thus edible. Each of these lads stay for 13 nights, and that's 13 nights too many in my opinion. I need my sleep. Number 2, Kallikantzaros. So they're a malevolent creature in Southeast European and Anatolian folklore. Stories about the Kallikantzaros, or its equivalents, can typically be found in Greece, Bulgaria, Turkey, Serbia, Albania, Bosnia, and Cyprus. These creatures are believed to dwell underground, but come to the surface during the 12 days of Christmas, from December 25th to January 6th. It is believed that while they're underground, they're sawing at the trunk of the tree that holds the earth, so it will collapse along with the earth. According to folklore, when the final part of the trunk is about to be sawed, Christmas dawns and the creatures are able to come to the surface. They forget the tree and come to bring trouble to mortals. Finally, on Epiphany, the sun starts moving again, and they must return underground to continue their sawing. They see that during their absence, the world tree has healed itself, so they must start working all over again. This is believed to occur annually. So these werewolf-like creatures tend to come out at night to cause trouble, play around, but after they've had their fill of the above-ground mischief, they go back down there. Rumor has it that leaving a colander on your doorstep is the best practice to ward them off, so excuse me, I gotta go through my kitchen. Number 1, Knecht Ruprecht. In the spirit of the season, I figured we could bookend today's list with Santa sidekicks. He's the most popular gift-bringing character in Germany after St. Nicholas, but is virtually unknown outside of the country. He first appears in written sources in the 17th century as a figure in a Nuremberg as a figure in a Nuremberg Christmas procession. Now, Knecht Ruprecht has been mentioned as a companion of St. Nicholas, but he would go from house to house and ask the young folks to pray. If they did, he would give them a treat, but if they didn't, he would give them useless trinkets, such as coal. The worst would come if they refused to even try to pray. He would thrash them with his bag of ashes that he liked to carry around, and it's even said that he would leave a switch for the parents to use during the year. In related folk traditions more closely associated with certain regions in the High Alps, particularly the snowy villages south and west of Salzburg in Austria, the Knecht Ruprecht character functions as St. Nicholas's assistant, rather than as a primary actor in the early December rituals, keeping a watchful eye on the benevolent saint during his journey. Both are, in turn, accompanied in these regions by an assortment of terrifying horned goat-like creatures, you guessed it, krampus, who seek out and terrorize misbehaving youths identified by St. Nicholas for punishment. The worst offenders are said to be thrashed with birch switches and sometimes stuffed in a hessian sack and thrown into an icy river for their bad deeds. I swear I was good this year, I promise. And that brings us to the end of our list, which means it's time for me to grab a cookie, a cocktail, and curl up for the rest of the evening with a member of my chosen family. If you enjoyed my ramblings today, could you help us out by giving this video a like, subscribing if you aren't already, hit the bell for more urban legends from us here at Top 5 Scary Videos, and I'll see y'all next time, you lovely spooky people. Oh, and for those who celebrate, Merry Christmas.